my RAID drives got disconnected, and the only fix for that is a reboot. So sorry about that. Let me get the chat room up really quick. Make sure that I can answer all your questions. Okay. Any more? Okay. Boom. Excellent. How's everyone doing today? So, if you're at your computers now, and you got RapidWeaver open, you might have seen in the last literally 20 minutes, I just shipped a ton of really big updates, and they're all for what we're going to be doing today. So, a lot of really cool stuff. We're going to be looking at all of that. It was an update to Foundation, Agent, and SEO Helper. So, three big updates. Well, the Foundation one is kind of tiny, but because it's Foundation, it's big, right? So, little update to a big stack. But Agent and SEO Helper had major updates going on today. So, cool stuff there. As always, just a quick thumbs up. I think I heard me on my laptop, so audio and video seem to be working okay. Larry, I am here. I was just a couple minutes late. Had some IT issues. Sorry about that. Scott, Gunter, Jurgen, Matthias, excellent. I guess all of you people are wanting to learn to build multilingual websites. Man, multilingual websites. So let's go ahead and just start jumping in, and start having some fun right now. Okay. Let's go ahead and share my screen. Do that. Let me do this. Okay. Okay. Here we go. Let's go ahead and launch RapidWeaver. Now, I do that. I was hoping to get have some time to build a really sample project, and whatnot, and kind of have something a little bit pre-baked, but it didn't happen. So, I have something I was playing around with. Hold on, let me get. I want this one and this one. Oh, there we go. There. Now my desktop's not quite as zoomed in. I was on the wrong camera. Okay. Let me make sure that we can see all this. Okay. So first things first. What do we want to go over first? Okay, I guess we'll go over the agent stack first. Okay. And all the cool stuff there. So let me just delete that. Okay. I'm going to leave these on the page. This is pretty much what we're going to be reviewing with agent right now. I redid a lot of stuff. So let me back up. If you didn't watch last week I did a live stream on how I, recommended we build multilingual websites. And by the end of it, I just didn't feel great. I didn't feel like everything was rock solid, and I just felt the workflow could be better for a lot of you, right? So I wanted to take the time, and I kind of went down the rabbit hole of multilingual websites and just updated a ton of stuff. And I was like, if I were to build the best way to build, do multilanguage websites, what would I do? And luckily I did that live stream, and I just found a lot of holes. That's not best. That could be a lot better. And, we could do a lot better here and a lot better there. And you know what, while it was fresh in my mind, I was just like, you know what, it turned out to be, almost a week's worth of work now. So yeah, let me take all of that and just do it now, while it's fresh in my brain. And I think I nailed it. I'm really interested to hear your feedback. So either, put it in the chat box today, what you're thinking, or, if you want to extend the conversation, go ahead and ask some questions on Weaver Space, or say, hey, Joe, that, what you did was great, but what about this and this too? So yeah, I think we've nailed it. And I'm really happy. I actually rebuilt the agent Lang stack 3 times since last Wednesday. So, I rewrote the code for it 3 times, and I think it's really, really good now. I'm really happy with it. So, okay, first off, let's go in the default thing, right? The easiest part is Agent Lang. What used to be called the Agent Lang stack is there's two Agent Lang stacks. Oh, gotta put my fingers over here. There's two Agent Lang stacks, and the one that we knew of before is now called Agent Lang rules. Okay, and this is the one where you can add as many rules as you want, and it's basically a way of showing and hiding content based on the rules. Okay, so if the language of the page is English, we'll show the English. If the language of the page is German, we'll show German. And the default on this is Spanish. Now, the reason in this little example, I defaulted the language of the page to be Spanish on purpose because the language of my browser is English. So I wanted something that was different. The default of the page is different than my browser language. And the reason for that is if we go up to the new Agent Lang stack, this is kind of a stack now that you'll just add to the top of your page. And it will define basically like all the defaults for the page. Right, so we have we can define the key, right? Or the key is basically what we add to the URL, right? So is it lang equals de, or maybe you want to use l equals de, or locale, or whatever, right? So you can add that. It's basically the little query string added to the end of the URL that determines the actual language of the page. So that the default is lang. I think that's good. But maybe that's because lang is English. I'm not sure what language is in other things, but maybe you want to change it. Okay. Next is a comma delimited list of the supported languages on the page. Because let's say someone clever goes, hey, I see I can add lang equals blah, blah, blah to the end of the URL. Let me add lang equals AZ, which is, I think, like one of the Arabic languages or something like that, right? Or AR. Let's say we add one of those, right? That's crooked. What the hell? Okay, let's say someone adds lang equals AZ to the end of the URL, but your page doesn't support AZ. So, we want to make sure that if a language that is not supported on the page is passed, then what we need to do is we default to the default language, right? So that's really cool. So if people are trying to hack a page or doing something, trying to mess around with it, and they put in something that's not supported, then we can make sure we go to the default. Now, for right now, for testing purposes, I have save language to session turned off. It's a little easier for me to test stuff with you and show it without trying to caching it in the session, right? This is on by default, and you probably want to keep it on by default because what that does is it'll set the language. Once the user has defined their preferred language, we could then, depending on any page that they go on in the site, whether or not the lang tag is added to the URL or not, it will still use that preferred language on the page. So I think that is a really clever thing to have turned on for testing purposes, just for me because I'm going to be changing and swapping things out and whatnot. I want to make sure I have predictable things because I'm going to be changing the settings all the time. So I turn that off for now. But you're probably going to want to have that turned on. Next is this browser lang redirect. Now, this is really cool. Okay. So let's say someone goes to your website, say Weaverspace. Okay. And they just go to www.weavers.space. And their browser language is set to Spanish, okay? But the English, the website itself is English. So what it says, what this setting does is it turns on redirect rules that we can turn on. So we could say, if they didn't explicitly define a language, okay, then what we do is we look at their browser language, so the settings in the browser, okay, then we redirect them to that language page. Okay, so let me republish this this project right here. Let me just go ahead and republish all. So make sure that everything on my test server is there. So this is really cool in that we can still display to the user their default language, but we also redirect them to the correct URL schema, right? And by doing that then it sets their language in the session and all kinds of stuff, right? So no matter what other page they go to, their language is set. Now, obviously, if you have buttons set up to go to different URLs or different languages, it'll then change that, right? So they can, if they're like, if it defaults the browser to Spanish, they can then choose English depending on where you put your little language buttons, right? And those are the same that we did last week. It's just a button with the question mark, lang equals blah, 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 right? So yeah, there's another way, it's just a nice way for them to default to their language. So we're kind of intelligently guessing based on the person's browser preferences or system preferences that they're a Spanish speaker. So we're going to default this site to be Spanish, and we can redirect them to that URL so that they get the correct, URL structure and Google tags and Open Graph tags and all that stuff, right? So really good stuff there. And let's see this in action. Okay, I'm going to open up a browser somewhere. Where's Safari go? Oh, there it goes. Okay, and let me make it a little bit bigger, smaller here. We're going to go to sandbox.joeworkman.net. Okay, cool. And what we'll notice is, if we look at the URL, it's set to lang equals English, and it redirected me to that. Okay, because if we look here, if we look at the settings here, I set my default language to be Spanish. Okay, the supported languages on this page are English, German, and Spanish. And if we look at the redirect rules, because I have those turned on, we have if we are English, we're going to redirect to, it'll basically detect the settings, and then we're going to append language equals en, right? So we append it to the current URL. And then here we have, we're going to redirect to German. So this will redirect to lang equals de, right? So really cool there. Now what's nice is, because I have this append to current URL setting, what this means is you can now partial this and put it across all of your pages. And what it will do is it will substitute that page's URL in there for you, right? So that's really, really powerful, right? Last week I did some setting, I did some things that showed you where you can type in a URL. And that was one of the things I noticed, like, wow, that isn't great, because at that point, you then have to have that setting for every single page unique, because the URL is going to be different. So what I did is on all of these, I've made sure that RapReaver already knows what the URL is. So what all we need to do is just, and I know what the language is, and I know what the key is, right? Because we set it inside agent lang. So yeah, by default. Now, if you want to manually set a URL, you can, right? But by default, you're just going to want to use the current URL of the page and add some stuff to the end, right? That's how we're going to use it most of the time, 99% of the time, probably. So by using this auto detect feature that I built into the stacks, you can now partial this agent lang stack and put it on all the pages across your site, and it will just work on every page, right? So really cool. So anyway, get back to this. So I have rules for if English and if German. I don't have a rule for Spanish because I don't need to redirect them. If they're on the page and they haven't defined a language yet, it's just going to default to Spanish because that's the default of the page, right? So you don't need to set up a redirect for whatever your default is. You only need to set up redirects for languages that are not your default. Does that make sense? Hopefully. Then down here in my agent rules stack, I said, okay, if this language rule is if it's English, display the English header. If it's German, display the German header, and then the default is Spanish. Okay, so that's why if I go to sandbox.joeworkman.net, and you guys can do this right now if you want, open up a browser window, go to sandbox.joeworkman.net, and it should redirect to, if you're from Germany, which I know a lot of you are, it should default to German here, okay? And if your language is set to English on your computer, it should redirect you to English. If you're any other country, it will display Spanish, okay? But I can explicitly call out Spanish if I wanted to say, language equals ES, then I can get Spanish, And if I want to explicitly do German, I can do language equals DE and I get German. Okay. Any questions on that? Hopefully, I didn't confuse you guys too much, but this setup is really, really cool. Like, I haven't seen anyone else do this, especially this kind of redirect on the page based on the browser language. Man, I think that's really, really cool. Very powerful stuff there. And I like that we redirect, right? So Agent Lang before, what it did is it would keep the URL, but it would modify the content based on the browser language. But by redirecting, it keeps things cleaner, right? It keeps things more exact, where it's like, I see your Spanish, I'm going to redirect you to the Spanish page. Or I see your German, I'm going to redirect to the German page. And at that point forward, you're always going to get that language. Okay. So yeah, that's really, really cool stuff right there. Any other questions on Lang? Let's see. A lot of people saying their mind are boggled. They like seeing this. Okay. Let's see. Hi, Joe. Just a remark, in the site settings from RapWeaver, there is a language setting on all pages that get language, also English and Spanish. Okay, I have a fix for this. Yeah. Hold on. I got you covered. Okay. So that pretty much covers Agent Lang. Really simple to set up, really simple to use. I guess I need to call out one special new feature. If you look at this button here, there is. So last week, we went over how are we going to manage menus, right? And I showed that we could use RWML, and RWML works out great. I know a lot of people use it, but I didn't like that situation where it just felt like a hack, where we have a stack where you're doing if we find about us, translate it to German to this, and you have to set up this stack where you have like tons of translations inside the stack, and the stack is huge. And yeah, you could probably partial it and put it on all your pages and whatnot, but I just felt there was a better way to do that. And so I got my mind thinking, and I thought, you know what, Total CMS, if any of you use Total CMS, there's a really powerful thing in Total CMS called macros. And they allow you to pull out data from the CMS and put it wherever you want it on the page. And I was thinking, like, what if we created macros for multi-language? Thought that'd be pretty cool. Now they have to be, they're a little complex, right? So here, let me pull out an example here. So inside the Agent Lang, I actually have an example here that you can copy and paste. This setting is here purely as an example, so you can just copy and paste it. So I'm going to copy that really quick, and let's go ahead. I'm going to open a code editor so we can see this in plain text. And my code editor is not wanting to load. There it goes. Okay. Okay. Here, let's put it down a little bit. A couple lines. Okay. So, if we see this, here is, we'll start up here. The base macro is %lang, parentheses %, right? So that's like the base quote unquote base macro. Okay. And then inside there, we have this. Okay, so let's look at that. Okay, inside this, we have a language code, EN, which is English, colon, and then whatever you want it to be. Hello, it could be a multi-words too. It could be about space us, whatever, right? And then after that is a comma. And then we define another language set. ES is Spanish, colon, hola, or whatever you want it, your translation to be. Then we do a comma. And as you see, you can keep going and going as many translations as you want. You can supply as many of these as you like, and it will work. So let's see this in action, okay? So here I have this button, okay? And if we look at this button here, let's go ahead and let's make it centered, and we'll make it large so it's nice and big. Okay. Cool. Let's just publish that change. Cool. And as you see, all I did is I pasted that macro inside the text of the button. The same one that we were just looking at. So it'll say hello, hola, and hello in German, right? Okay. So it'll say one of those three things based on the language that we pass. So if we look here, our current language is set to German. And if you notice, the label on the button says hello. Nice. Okay. And if we go to, if we do Spanish, it says hola, right? And if we do English, of course, we get hello. Now, one thing I didn't show earlier was, let's put in some language equals some gibberish, right? So we got just some, here, let's do like AR, right? So language equals AR, which is Arabic, okay? I don't support Arabic on my page. It's one of the unsupported languages. So it goes to the default of Spanish, right? And our button says hola because it has the macro. And the macro said, hey, the language is currently on this page set to Spanish, so I'm going to display the Spanish content. Cool. Really, really cool stuff. I like that. So you might thinking, okay, Joe, that's cool. How can I use this in my menus? Like that's the problem we wanted to solve, right? Like, how do we make that better? So let's go ahead. Let's do a little bit of work here. Let's just go ahead and add top bar to the page. I am using Foundation, obviously, right? Duh. Okay. So let's do top bar. Let's add it to the top of the page. Okay, so we have top bar, and here I'm just going to preview locally. I won't publish every time. Okay, so if you see here, let's customize this home page. Okay, and so how do we customize this menu button based on the language? Well, we have a macro, and all we got to do is change the page name to be the macro. That's it, right? So we change the page name to be the macro. As you see, I have the macro inside my page name. And let's preview. Voila. If you notice that, it says hola. And if here, let's publish it. It's a little easier to publish. Then you guys can play with it if you want. Okay. Let's go to Sandbox. There we go. So now we're in Spanish, and it says hola. And if I change my language to be English, it says hello. And of course, if we do German, it says hello. Right? Pretty cool. Like that is easy for me. Like that's easy. Like all we needed to do was get this little macro and change our page name. That was it. Like there's no special stack. Well, you have to have the agent lang stack on the page, right? So you do have to have that. But there's no like complicated stacks where you have to have a gazillion settings to translate stuff, right? It's just a macro. And you can define as many languages as you want. Chances are you're probably gonna be 2, 3, or something like that, right? Man, I can't imagine trying to do a site with more than 3 languages. Even 3 kind of boggles my mind, all the work that you'd have to do. But yeah. And yes, you do see the macro over here, but you can still see with relative ease what the page name is, even if this is short. Yeah, you see %lang, but you still see en hello, right? So you still see a lot of the page name in there. But I think this just makes things a lot simpler because it's just modifying the page names here. So all your page names would simply be the macros, right? So yeah. Really simple. I think the macros are pretty simple to use and are going to be huge game changers. And you can use them anywhere on the page, right? So if you want to change the browser title, guess what? Language macro, right? If you want to change, you can't do the folders, okay? Folders aren't allowed. Those aren't things that are actually like in the HTML, right? But you can change the browser title. Most settings, like you can use this header, right? Like right here. Let's say this header stack, instead of using agent rules, right? Let's say, here, let's just change this right now. I'm going to do, okay, English, Spanish, German. Okay. So instead of this language rules stack, now I have a single header stack with a macro in it, right? Yeah, it looks like gibberish here in edit mode, but voila, it just works. right? So it makes our pages simpler, right? Less stacks. Sometimes you will need the language rule stack if you really want to have something very different. But if we're just changing out the text, and obviously if you're doing stuff like paragraphs of text, I wouldn't use the macro, right? I mean, it'd probably be a lot easier to manage paragraphs of text with, the lang rule stack. But if you're just doing a button or a header or things like that, which are, a few words max, then these macros are genius. Like, super cool. I am really, really excited about these macros. And so yeah, these macros round up the updates to the agent lang stack. I think you guys are gonna love that. And yeah, I see a lot of you guys are saying that it's great. Okay. Oh man, someone's got a 4-language website to build. Oh, so yeah, you're really gonna love this. This is gonna be much easier for you. Okay. So now, next up, what are we gonna work on now? Okay, so let's jump into the changes in Foundation right now. Okay. I think I have the new version installed here. So yeah, I do. Okay. Previously, Foundation had a setting under the fonts that said language. Okay. And prior to Rapweaver 8, there was no way to set the language of your website. It was hard coded in the theme, but I don't remember at what version of Foundation I added this ability to do it yourself via site styles. Now, however, I removed that for a couple reasons. Rapweaver 8 already has it. If you just go to not advanced, if you just go to general, okay, and we go to site language, you can set it here. Okay, so you can set the site language there now. So really, Foundation site styles didn't need to have it any longer. Okay, and if you change, a side effect was if you changed it. Let's say you changed this to German, but then your Foundation site styles was set to English. Whatever was in site styles would win. Yeah, now it's always set inside general, and you don't need to worry about that. Cool. So that was the only change in this Foundation update was I removed that setting. Okay. But you might be thinking, well, that's great, Joe, but inside Rapweaver, I can set the language to be English. In fact, I set the default language of this site to be Spanish, so I probably should set this to be Spanish, right? But even though it's set to Spanish, here, let's go ahead. Right now, this page is set to German. Okay, let's go ahead and look at the code. If we look at the code, though, the language here says English. What the heck? What's the point of having all my content German if the content inside the metadata says that this page is English and it's not, it's German? How do we fix that? Okay, so hopefully all you guys have SEO Helper, and if you do, or if you don't, you're gonna want to get it. Okay, because I added the following feature into SEO Helper. Let me just get it out really quick. Okay. So SEO Helper actually had a huge update today. There's a lot of multi-language stuff in here, but there's a lot of non-multi-language stuff in this update as well. Check out the release notes. Maybe if we have a little bit of time at the end of today, I'll show you some of the other new stuff. But what we notice here is there's two things that we can do. There's page title and page language. Okay. Now, I added the page title in here prior to me coming up with that genius language macro. So here, this is what we'll do. Let's get agent lang. Oops. Okay, we're gonna get the language rule stack. And one thing you'll notice is we can now add language rules directly. So we can add a agent lang rule stack directly into SEO Helper. Kind of cool. Okay, so we can now do language rules directly inside SEO Helper. Pretty cool. So what we could do here is, we could have done, if it's English, the page title is this, right? And if it's German, So, and then the default obviously would be Spanish right here. Spanish. This was German, so we'll set the German. And that was English. Okay. So we have an agent rules that says, well, if our language is English, set the page title to be English. If the language rule is German, set it to be German, else default to Spanish. Okay. You can do that. However, for the page title explicitly, I'd probably just use a macro and define the macro in here, right? So we could just do, put in the macro directly inside the browser title there. And that will, you can also use it here inside the title tag if that's, the override settings. But yeah, so browser title, you can set that there. Instead of using the agent lang rule with the page title. Page title, I mean, it's still there. It works well, even in non agent settings. If you just set the page title, it'll override whatever is inside the page inspector. So it's a good option if you want to manage the title of your page from SEO Helper. Cool. Okay. So what else can we do with a agent lang rules inside SEO Helper? Well, here, let's go ahead and change the page language. So if the page language is English, we'll set the language to be English. If the language is German, let's go ahead and set the page language to be German. Oops, not Greek. There we go. And then obviously the default page language is going to be Spanish. Okay. You could probably just leave the blank because the default is set by RapidWeaver anyway, but for consistency's sake, we'll leave it in there. Okay. So let's test this out, right? I'm going to delete that for now. And we'll leave it. Okay, so we have meta tags. Now, I did two things here. I actually set my browser lang, the browser title to have the language macro. Then we did the language rules inside SEO Helper that swaps out the language of the page. Let's publish this. Drum roll, please. While this goes, I'm going to turn my overhead fan on. It's getting really hot in here. Okay, that published. Let's go have a look. Okay, so if you notice now inside the browser title, we have hello in my in here. Now the browser title kind of if you wanted to override the entire title, you could use it inside the title tag, right? Here, let's just publish that. Okay. And then what else did we do? Oh yeah, the language of the page. So here the language of the page is German, and if we look inside the code, language is set to German. Voila. Really, really cool. And if we go to English, we'll see that we have hello again in the English there in the title. And then if we look at the actual HTML on the page, the language is set to English. And obviously, if we change that and went to Spanish, same thing. The language is set to Spanish inside the HTML. So really, really cool stuff here. We can use these agent lang rules inside of SEO Helper to help us do all of these, language specific SEO tags. So really cool stuff here. So what other things are useful for agent specific, right? So we talked last week about how we needed to have some URL settings, right? We need to be able to tell Google and search engines that this is my canonical URL. This is the default URL. Here's the alternate language for English, and here's the alternate language for German. Okay. So let's go ahead and start setting that up. So we're going to set up a canonical URL, and the default here is just going to be the default URL. Okay. We're going to add into here. We're going to go into the canonical URL settings, and I added another setting. So this is another one where last week I had to manually type in the full URL, right? And again, I already know what the URL is. RapidWeaver knows what it is. So why can't I just take that and append data to it? So what we can do is we can say append to current URL, and we can append language equals This is English right now, so EN. Okay, and then we're going to copy this down to the German one, and we're going to set this to be lang equals DE. And what's really powerful, again, is because these are going to detect what the current page URL is and just add the language to the end, you can now partial this and add it to all of your pages. Really, really powerful stuff here. Huge time saver. Okay. So we have our canonical URL set up. Perfect. Okay. Now we need to set up the alternate languages. So we're going to go ahead and go to alternate language, and let's create the default. So by default, we're going to have the current URL, and remember the default is Spanish. So we need to have an alternate language for German and an alternate language for English. Okay. So here, let's set the, this one is going to be German, and we'll just copy and paste that, and we'll set this one to be English and set append URL to be EN at the end. Okay. So here we do, the canonical URL is the default URL with nothing. The alternate lang URL is the current URL with lang equals DE at the end. And then the English URL is the current URL with lang equals EN at the end. So now we need to do these. So let's go, when we go to the English version of the site, the canonical URL is English, but we need to define a Spanish version. Okay, Spanish version. And we'll put language equals ES, and we need to define a German version, which, so German language equals DE. Okay. So now, and then for German, we're going to have a Spanish version. And then we're going to have an English version, which I already had from down here. So there we go. Okay. Hopefully that this kind of starting to make sense. So for every single language rule, we have the language of the page, which is set. And then we have the various URLs and alternate language versions of them for each language. So if I'm doing 3 languages, I need one canonical URL and 2 alternate languages. Hopefully that's making sense. Okay. Okay, so this is really cool, right? We can now, this is a lot of the basics that we need. Now, okay, the obvious thing is now if you want to do like Facebook, rules or, different, metadata for whatever, right? You could probably use SEO basics if you wanted to. And you could just drag SEO basics and say this is the default, right? So this is the default SEO basics inside, and then you can, obviously change all this to be all the English stuff. And guess what? You can use macros in here too, right? So if you're going to use macros, you could probably just, have, oops, where'd it go? So we can take it out of the lang rules, and then we could just put in our macros in here too, right? So we could just do, boom, there's my title, right? What's my image URL, right? Image URL is probably going to be the same actually, right? Description. Description is one that, again, depending on the length, maybe the macro would be a little hard to manage because it's just going to be super long. It should work, right? There's no reason. However, make sure if you're using macros that the data that you're passing in the macro doesn't have commas or doesn't have semicolons in it. So, or colons, sorry, doesn't have colons. Because that will throw it off, the parsing and stuff like that. So yeah, make sure if you're using these macros, that, you don't have, hello, comma, us, or something like that. Yeah, it doesn't make sense, but, or, the actual thing can't have a colon in it because, I'm depending on those colons and commas, in there. So you can't use those right now. Okay. So yeah, so the combination of the agent lang rules inside of SEO Helper gives us a lot of power. And then also, as we saw, we can use the macros, the language macros inside of SEO Helper as well to get us even more power. So we don't even need to, separate stuff out if we don't have to. So really cool stuff there. Cool. And let's see, what was there any other? I think that's about it. So with those things, you should be able to build an extremely powerful fully SEO compliant. Oh, I forgot one thing. Oh, good thing. Okay, good thing. I thought I was done. I'm not even done. Okay. So I'm done with all the on-page stuff. So all this stuff will allow you to build a fully, developed site that is fully SEO compliant. So if Google sees this page, it's going to say, hey, I see this page is German. I see that there's also an English and Spanish versions of this page. Here's the URLs to those so I can properly index them and cache those inside my specific search indexes for those languages, right? Like, all done. And yes, it's a little bit of work, but hopefully I made it as simple as possible with using the language rules inside SEO Helper, and then also using these macros wherever you want. Okay. But there's one more thing for SEO, right? What about sitemaps? Like, how can we tell Google beforehand about all of these pages? What do we need to do there? Well, I'm glad you asked, because I have a solution for that too. Okay. So, oh no, here I'm leaking the information here. Here. Okay. So here we're on a sitemap page, and if you haven't noticed, this is SEO Helper's sitemap stack. And let's go ahead and add a new sitemap location. Okay. Now, if you'll notice, there is a new setting in here called extensions, and you can enable these extensions for each particular URL. So what you can do is you can click on plus, and we'll notice it adds this little plus button. And there's a few extensions here. Not all are for multi-language sites. But if we click on the plus button, you see that there's an alternate language option. So if we click on that, you'll see we now have the ability to define an alternate page. So now here you do have to put in the full URL. The sitemap builder, forces you, we have to have the entire URL in there. So it will be a little bit of work where you have to actually put in the full URL with the language at the end, and then you define what the language is here, right? So this is German. Okay, I can go ahead and copy and paste that. I need an English version, English. And then we do language equals EN. There we go. Okay. Now remember, my default page was Spanish. So I don't need to list a Spanish version because that's my default language, right? So here's the default language. And then here is the alternate versions for German and English. And then what you do is you would just go ahead, if you add another page, you would simply go in here, enable it, and then add more alternate languages for this page as well. So as you see, it's a lot of work, right? Because you are going to have to build out this sitemap file and add alternate languages for everything, okay? But it's pretty cool. Maybe in the future I can come up with some interesting ways to automate this a little bit. But for right now, I'm pretty happy with this. So it will be a little bit of work. Now, while we're here and I got 10 minutes to kill, what are some of these other options in here? So you can add image. So if you want to associate an image with a URL, it's similar to here. You could pass an image CSV, but here just makes it a little bit more user friendly. So you could just add images, as many as you want. You can also add videos. There's two video options. There's self-hosted video, where it gives it, you have to actually have an MP4 file on your server. Okay. And then there's also a hosted video option, which is like YouTube or Vimeo or something like that, where then you can put in the URL to that video. And you still need to supply, for the videos, you have to supply a lot of more data than you do images, right? So you have to supply a thumbnail, you have to supply a title, and you have to supply a description. And they recommend that you also supply the duration of the video, so in seconds. So the videos are a little bit more work to add. There's more data you need, but hey, if you want to be able to submit videos with your sitemap files and associate these videos and images and stuff with your web pages, this is a great way to do that. So sitemap got a huge update. This was a lot of work. Cool. Okay, let me quickly look in the chat box. Does total CMS macro work inside the agent macro? Oh geez. Does the total CMS macro work inside the agent macro? In theory, yes, actually, it should work. I'm just thinking of the macro syntax for total CMS, and I haven't tested that yet, but it should work. Okay, here let's test. Let's play with it. Okay, let's do that really quick. I have no idea if that's gonna work. Let's go ahead. Let me just hide that. Okay, let's play with this macro here. Hold on, let me go to my server really quick. I know I have some CMS saved on my sandbox. Let me just go ahead and quickly look what things I can do. Let's see, CMS data. Let's just do text. Or header. This is probably pretty. Let's see what's in here. Okay. So I'm gonna put this header macro inside there. Let's test this. That. Okay, for English, if it's English, I'm gonna put in the contents of that. So I'm gonna do percent CMS data. Header percent. Wow, that's complex. Actually, now that I see it written out, I see there's probably a problem here. I don't think that will work now, actually. It all depends on the order, though. If this total CMS macro is resolved first, let's try it. Let's get total CMS. Oh, here, I just have it group here. Any content core on the page. I think if we resolve the CMS macro first, it should work. So let me go ahead and let's see. Okay. Shoot, hold on. I have text expander and typeinator running at the same time right now, and they're both trying to fill in the same macro. There we go. All right, good. All right, now I got my macro. So if CMS core is above language, I think it should work. Here, let's publish. This publish might take a little while. Okay, let me look. While this publishing, let's look at the other questions. I'm clever. Yes. Thank you, Gunter, for the compliments. Okay. So it looks like Davide had the only question with macros inside agent macros. Wow, this is going to be crazy. It all depends on if that total CMS macro is processed first. It depends on the order in which Stacks adds those to the page. This makes for very cryptic looking macros, though, right? Because we have lang and then CMS data in here, and man, it's kind of cool though. If this works, that'll be pretty badass. Almost there. Oh man, drum roll. Okay, so I added that to the English macro, right? So here we go. No. that was, oh wait, hold on. Interesting. What if I do English? It comes out blank. Interesting. Blank. Okay. Well, that's something to look into and play with. Clever idea. I will have to do some sleuthing there to see what I can do to make that better. Because I think that would be really cool and really powerful if we could do that. For now, you can definitely use the Lang rule stack, and then supply multiple total CMS instances, right, or things. That will definitely work for now, and that will work, in the future as well. That should never break. So yeah, you can use if you wanted this button, you would have a language rule with 3 different buttons, and then each button would have its own CMS macro in it. That'll totally work. But yeah, good question. Using that I was skeptical. Yeah. And it's not working right now, but it's something I can play around with. That's an interesting idea. Definitely kind of convoluted here to read and display, but, pretty cool. I can definitely see that being beneficial for UPower users. So anyway, cool, everyone. I think that wraps up today. I showed you everything that I wanted to, and I came in with 3 minutes to spare. Boom! Score. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed today. Hopefully you enjoy all the updates. They're all the stuff you saw today is now live. Update your stacks. They're all there. Have some fun. Post to Weaverspace. You can send me support requests if you really want. But I suggest you just post publicly on the Weaverspace community and let everyone interact and supply their ideas and stuff like that. And I've been super busy lately with the conference and getting Foundation 6 done. So you probably get a response a little quicker if you post on the community. Just being honest here. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone. I hope you appreciate today's live stream and all the other live streams. And speaking of the conference, go ahead and check it out. Summit.weavers.space. I finalized the schedules today. So all the schedules that are on the site right now are active and they're live. There might be a couple shuffles in terms of whatnot, but the times are locked in, right? So, and I added 1 extra session per day this year. So, we have 18 sessions this year instead of 15. So, yeah, we have extra 3 hours this year of talks. So there were just some people that wanted to talk that came in afterwards, and I couldn't say no. I was just too many good people wanted to talk this year. So hopefully you can join us there at the summit, October 18th to the 20th. Go ahead. The early bird discount is still available. You can get the discount now until I think I said it is the first week of October. So yeah, go ahead and make sure that you capitalize on that now. While you can still get that, I think it's like a $50 discount right now. So go ahead and purchase your tickets now, and hopefully we'll see you then. And yeah, if you want to join us on Friday, we have Hangouts every Friday, and I will hopefully see a lot of you there on Friday. I'll probably show off some new Foundation stuff. I've been working a lot on Foundation lately, so yeah, hopefully I'll show up some new Foundation stuff on Friday. We've had a bunch of new people show up on the last few weeks, probably because I've been enticing them to see previews here on the live streams. So yeah, if you want to see live streams of how Foundation 6 is shaping up and you want to kind of get your feedback in there early, yeah, join the Hangouts and let me know. And can't wait to see you there. So take care, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Go out and make something great. And we will talk to you later.